What are your impressions of the current session of the Valdai Club and your interaction with its participants today? 2 questions.
Well, the impressions are positive. As always, I really like this audience. The audience is attentive, not biased, and always tries to clarify various aspects related to Russian foreign policy. So I consider this a very useful initiative. And we not only share information by answering participants' questions, but also gather certain ideas that in some cases are implemented into practical policy. And of course, the main event will be the day after tomorrow when President Putin arrives. I think this session will be the most eventful if we are looking forward to questions and answers from our president.
The second question, if I may, I will move to the international arena. What is Moscow's position regarding the plan to resolve the situation in Gaza that was announced on Monday?
How do you evaluate the proposal to create temporary external administration with international participation and the formation of an international contingent for rapid deployment in Gaza?
And has Moscow received any signals today about possible participation in this contingent? And how do you assess, in your opinion, the chances of success of this plan overall?
We have not seen this plan. We have only heard comments about what it consists of. Actually, you just listed the main points, but I heard that this international body, which will temporarily govern Gaza, is planned to be headed by Tony Blair. He himself seems to have already announced it, but I repeat, I do not have the details. I do not know what powers they plan to grant him, how the Arab countries feel about this. I know that some of them have already welcomed Donald Trump's plan. But of course, a final decision should only be made when we know the opinion of all the neighbors. Palestine and Israel, and generally the countries of the region, the League of Arab States, the Cooperation Council, the Gulf states, and the Palestinians themselves, first and foremost. I heard that they do not want to include the representatives of the Palestinian National Authority, even as observers in this temporary body. Yes, and regarding international forces for ensuring security, no, we were not invited there. I repeat, we only heard about this plan yesterday. But I read that the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, commenting on Trump's plan, which was announced after Netanyahu's visit to Washington. So the Prime Minister of Israel said that the plan is good, no changes should be made to it. Hamas and everyone else must agree with it. And among the positive aspects of this plan, he said that Israel will retain control over security in Gaza. This does not quite correlate with the creation of international forces, so I repeat, all the details need to be clarified first.
Journalist Siko.
You know, China put forward a global governance initiative at the SCO summit. The Russian side supported this initiative. Tell me, what do you think is the practical significance of this initiative? Was the possibility of any joint actions within the framework of the global governance initiative discussed at the platforms
SCO and BRICS?
No, well, as you said, the initiative was proposed literally a day before, or rather, we learned about it a day before the SCO summit, but we consider it useful and aimed at correcting the situation where global governance mechanisms are completely subordinated to the West. And the International Monetary Fund, there the United States is obstructing the decision to increase quotas for countries of the Global South. And in the World Bank, where there is simply an abuse of the leading positions by the West. Just recently, Ursula von der Leyen said that we will support Palestine, it needs to be rebuilt, and we, the European Union, are allocating 1.5 billion euros for the reconstruction of Palestine. She said this with pride. Such a huge amount. And how much do they give to Ukraine? Not for rebuilding Ukraine, but for it to fight against Russia hundreds of times more. Therefore, of course, and just recently, Ukraine approached the World Bank to request a loan of 38 billion, and the World Bank said, what, 38 billion? How about 65? This bias, this abuse of multilateral mechanisms to advance their unilateral geopolitical selfish goals, this is a problem. Well, the World Trade Organization also needs reforms because the United States has been blocking the work of the dispute settlement body for decades. First of all, they block it so that this body does not consider the appeal from China about discrimination in violation of World Trade Organization rules by Western countries in trade with the People's Republic of China. Well, the United Nations, of course, the reform of the Security Council and other structures should be fair, including, by the way, the reform the United Nations Secretariat, were key positions on which the activities of the entire United Nations system and the distribution of financial resources within the Secretariat structures depend, are all occupied and privatized by representatives of NATO and the European Union. This is not in order, therefore, we will advocate for the reform of global governance. As for the practical aspects, we, of course, proceed from the facts that our Chinese comrades, as the initiators of this proposal, will specify their approaches, and we will actively facilitate this.
Please, TASS agency.
Sergei Viktorovich, good afternoon. Igor Morok, TASS agency. Recently, parliamentary elections were held in Moldova and the results are already known. The ruling party won. Could you please say whether it can be said that using electoral mechanisms, Moldova is being defined by so-called anti-Russian forces?
Of course, Maya Sandu has long become one of the heralds of anti-Russian rhetoric. The elections are fraudulent. I am simply amazed at how openly they can manipulate voters' voices. But the most important thing is that even with manipulations, with creating obstacles for the voting of Transnistria residents, there they closed bridges, declared some quarantines. Not everyone was able to. But even with this, with these manipulations, after the patriotic opposition gained almost as much, or rather gained more within Moldova than Maya Sandu's party. And only the use of resources for voting abroad, when in Europe they practically carried everyone to these polling stations, while in Moscow, in Russia, there were only two. Of course, all this helped to get the necessary percentage or 0.5%. And despite all the manipulations, the result is still very telling that even with such fraudulent methods, they don't do very well.
Vitaly Viktorovich, hello. Daria Kozlova, Russia 24. A lot of loud statements.
You have RT written.
We all have RT written now. A lot of loud statements are coming from Washington. Trump's special envoy Keith Kellogg, in an interview with Fox News, claims that Ukraine supposedly has permission to strike Russian territory. JDV talks about the discussion of supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Is this considered in Moscow as a form of pressure from Washington on Moscow? And how will our Russian authorities respond diplomatically?
I think this is primarily the result of Europe's pressure on Washington. And Washington wants to show that it considers the opinions of its allies, I don't think we are already dealing with a made decision. The Americans do not supply Tomahawks to just anyone. Among Europeans, if I am not mistaken, only to Spain and the Netherlands. They are cautious with others, and if they consider Ukraine to be a responsible state that will use them responsibly, that would be surprising to me. Yes, Keith Kellogg and J.D. Dewens talked about this. Keith Kellogg, by the way, generally takes a completely pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian stance. Although President Trump always says that he is a mediator and that Ukraine and Russia should resolve things directly. And Keith Kellogg recently publicly advised the Ukrainian regime to accept reality and de facto agree that the territory is as it is now, and advised not to worry about it because the Baltics were part of the Soviet Union. We did not recognize them de jure, and then they became free. And it will be the same for you, said Keith Kellogg. This differs from the position held by President Trump. Therefore, there are many speakers who simply promote the Ukrainian agenda, but the Kremlin has already stated quite clearly that even if these Tomahawks end up in Ukraine, it will not change the military situation.
Thank you. Please, agency.
Sergei Viktorovich, good afternoon. If I may, a question about our main global partner, India. The United States administration does not cease its attempts to force Britain to abandon Russian oil under the pretext of allegedly financing the conflict in Ukraine. In your opinion, what are the true reasons for this pressure?
The true reasons are that President Trump announced the necessity for the United States to actively defend its national interests. Here he includes in national interests quite aggressive promotion of his goods to international markets, to his partners, and the elimination of competitors, in this case the Russian Federation, under the pretext that there is a war in Ukraine. But the Indian colleagues have already responded to the calls to stop buying oil from Russia. They basically proceed from the fact that if the United States wants to sell something to India, including oil, then India is ready to sit at the negotiating table and discuss the terms. As for how and in what way to trade with other countries, including with Russia, this generally pertains to Russian-Indian relations. This position was expressed by Prime Minister Modi and by Foreign Minister Jaishankar. And I believe that this position reflects the national interests, the national dignity of our Indian friends. Allow the last question. Brazilian news agency.
Good afternoon, Sergei Marin.
I am a correspondent for Che Facto. Brazil played an active role in attempting to mediate the conflict in Ukraine. How do you assess today's contacts from the Brazilian side in this context, in the context of Aranji?
We have very close relations with our Brazilian friends. I was at the BRICS summits and at the meeting of foreign ministers. We had detailed conversations with both President Lula and Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira. We appreciate the Brazilian position, which a couple of years ago formulated a proposal to assist in solving humanitarian issues in particular. Well, humanitarian problems are being solved in accordance with the views expressed by our Brazilian friends. By the way, Africans, led by the Republic of South Africa, have also formulated such considerations, and humanitarian issues are being resolved, prisoners are being exchanged, bodies are being returned, and problems of separated families are being addressed. The Ukrainians have been saying for a long time that tens of thousands of children are missing and that Russia, it seems, has taken them away. When the Russian and the Russia Ukrainian delegations met once again in Istanbul. Our delegation insisted, please give us the list of these children. This is a serious issue. After persistent persuasion, the Ukrainians handed over a list of 339 children. Most of them turned out not to be children, but adults, and in no way related to being on the territory of the Russian Federation. And the majority turned out to be not in Russia, but in Europe. Therefore, these humanitarian issues need to be resolved honestly. And we appreciate that Brazil stands for this. As for the political aspects of the settlement, we explained to our Brazilian colleagues and other BRICS colleagues the approaches that President Putin has repeatedly voiced. The main thing for a sustainable settlement is to eliminate the root causes of the conflict, eliminate the security threats to the Russian Federation that the West created using the Ukrainian regime, and fully restore the rights of the Russian and Russian-speaking population, which are legislatively banned in Ukraine. So we will continue to cooperate. Thank you very much.